Thomas Gainsborough, the artist, was a favourite of King George III. When he died, he was buried, at his own wish, at the Church of St Anne's in Kew. But now his tomb has fallen into a state of terrible disrepair. I'm here with the parish priest, Father Nigel Warren, and the Friends of St Anne's, David Barker, to talk about the steps being taken to put this right.
He wasn't a worshipper at St Anne's, but he was connected with the court, and he also had friends who did worship here, and he fell in love with the building.
And it is a beautiful building, isn't it? Could you tell me a little bit about the building?
Well, the building exists only because of Kew Palace and the court coming down here and needing somewhere to worship. And Queen Anne gave a legacy and the land to build a small chapel. But as the area expanded, the church has undergone several enlargements, the last being with the Victorians, making it into this very beautiful building that we now are standing in.
And what's the congregation like now? It's a very thriving church, isn't it?
We're very fortunate. Most Sundays we would have a congregation of around about 200 worshippers of all ages, including around about 40 children on any given Sunday, which is vital for the future of the church.
And how important is the legacy of Thomas Gainsborough and others here?
Well, to be honest with you, it's a mixed blessing. It's wonderful to have these famous people associated with St Anne's, but it's also quite a headache when we have to come to maintaining their graves and monuments. We've got Zophany, who's probably the next best-known artist whose grave was restored a few years ago on the South Circular. And then we've got Engelhardt, who was a court miniaturist painter, and several other quite well-known people, including some of the directors of Kew Gardens. And
it's a headache, isn't it, because the whole Church of England is strapped for cash at the moment, and you've obviously got an appeal anyway.
Yes, indeed. Our 300th anniversary occurs in 2014, and over the last few years we've been raising a substantial amount of money to make sure that this building is left in a fit state for the generations to come as part of our stewardship.
And how about the wider mission of the church in Kew? Would you say it's typical middle-of-the-road Church of England?
St Anne's, like all parish churches, seeks to serve its community, and we certainly have a good outreach into the local community. St Anne's also stands within what is called the inclusive church model, which means that we have a particular welcome to all comers.
Tell me why.
Yes, we're hoping to restore the tomb, as it's in a rather dilapidated state. And to do that, we need consent from the diocese and from London Borough Richmond and English Heritage. So we have a meeting here to get approval for the restoration.
And why should we restore it?
It's in a dilapidated state. Obviously, Gainsborough is a world-famous artist, and it's rather demeaning to look at this tomb and to think that someone that we should be celebrating is buried under a rather unworthy monument at the moment.
His friend over there, Joshua Kirby, that's why he is here, because he wanted to be buried next to his friend, Joshua Kirby.
And is he entombed with his wife?
Yes, his wife, when she died, was entombed, and so was his nephew. His nephew was Dupont, Gainsborough Dupont.
And who was Joshua Kirby?
He was an artist, he was and an architect, wasn't he? And in fact, he's responsible for part of the design of this church. But he also was a miniaturist and did a lot of work for the Georgian
project.
Well, we've looked primarily at the plans and they look fine, yes. So we're just here to discuss matters and then we will decide later.
What about ashes to ashes, dust to dust though? Shouldn't we just let it crumble?
Oh no, this is a listed monument and it has to be taken care of and it has to be restored and conserved in the correct manner. Yes.
So in technical terms, what's wrong with it at the moment?
Well, I think the stonework's crumbling and the mortar is eroded, and it's just time really that's taking its toll, and it just needs a bit of TLC. The cracks here need to be repaired. The metalwork needs to be restored. It's a little loose as well, and I think if we go around this far end of the tomb, you'll see that there's damage here which needs to be repaired. It's come away as the render, and that needs to be repaired.
Well, I think that it's very much part of a bigger plan to restore the whole church and churchyard for the tercentenary in 2014. In fact, David was very much part of setting up a tercentenary appeal, which has raised in the order of about £400,000 to date, and we've restored a lot of the outside of the church.
What's the target ultimately?
The target was 500,000, but we will need more money than that to complete the whole project.
So when was the church founded?
1714.
And what's the date of the tomb?
The date of the tomb is 1788 he died, but the tomb we're looking at was 1865.
What's the story about him and Joshua Reynolds?
Well, there's no story really. In fact, that they were just sort of rivalries, as in fact people are. My style of painting is better than your style of painting, so it was very friendly rivalry, and the purpose of linking the two together is because they very often painted the same type of people, and it's really exploring why and how they did this, and that's how their rivalry came about really. But I, as chairman of the Friends, we have a brief where we've actually pledged the money to restore this tomb because of its obviously worldwide importance, and we get people coming from all over the world looking at it and complaining at how dilapidated it is. But the church obviously has other priorities, and it cannot be seen to be spending money that is raised by the congregation to do the mission of the church on gravestones. So that's why the Friends has been set up some years ago to look at those things that other people from outside don't want to see the church fall into disrepair.
And how much money are we talking about?
What, for the tomb?
Yes.
The tomb is probably going to be in the region of £15,000.
Can you tell me about the Gainsborough House Trust?
Yes, the Gainsborough House Trust up in Suffolk is where Gainsborough was born, and they have his house obviously is a museum where people can go and look at all the artefacts associated with his life and his birth, and we have lots of visitors from there who come down here to see where he was buried.
And that they of course are supporting...
They're supporting us by informing their members, because their brief in their charity status doesn't allow them to make any financial donations, but they publicise throughout their membership, and their members then come and look and then hopefully give us some money.
Gainsborough painted the portraits of King George III and his Queen, and received many other royal commissions. But when in 1784 the royal painter Allan Ramsay died, Gainsborough's rival and president of the Royal Academy, Joshua Reynolds, got the job.
Well, the story about Gainsborough and Reynolds has a happy ending in that they were reconciled before Gainsborough's death, and in fact Reynolds was one of the pallbearers at his funeral.